This plant is Marshmallow, and you can see that these ones are just getting started. Right behind it, we can see the stalks from last year, which shows you that it can really get about 4 feet tall. I think that some of these were maybe 5 feet, maybe a little bit over 5 feet tall. It's a really easy plant to grow. Once you get it started, it requires virtually no maintenance to grow. It'll grow in a lot of different types of soil. And again, you know, feel leaves. And this plant, the leaves of this, they feel like the finest, smoothest, softest velvet. Kids just love feeling a leaf like this. You know, we think about mullein as being a fuzzy, soft plant, but mullein is actually, you know, a lot of people, you rub it on mullein on your skin, it can cause some irritation. It's got a little bit more of an abrasive, irritating feeling with the hairs, whereas this is just as soft as can be. And the leaves of this, the flowers, and the root can be used. And the main quality that it has is it is a mucilaginous demulcent. Demulcents are plants that when they get mixed with water, they have a generally moistening effect. And mucilage is the reason that many plants are demulcent. It's a complex carbohydrate, mixes with water, it gets goopy and slimy. And so if you take marshmallow root and you chop it up and you dry it out and then you soak it in water, it will hydrate and become thick and viscid. And it's cooling and soothing to inflamed, dry surfaces. Many plants have a demulcent activity. Violet leaves, when you chew on them, they have a little bit of sliminess to them. Sassafras leaves, purple loosestrife flowers, plantain has some. But marshmallow is a very purely demulcent plant. That's the main quality that it has, especially in the root. So you can grow this plant easily. It's widely effective on a number of systems, but we can think about the way that it works. In some cases, it's really obvious. You have this liquid that's thick and viscid and slimy and lubricating, and definitely it feels cooling. If you make some up, I mean, that's one of the things you should do, is get some marshmallow root, grind it to a coarse powder, chop it up finely, let it sit in cool water for a couple hours. Mucilage extracts better in cool water than it does in hot water. Doesn't mean that it doesn't extract in hot water, but you'll get a better extraction in cool water. And then get it to be thick, get it to be where you can stick your fingers in and it drips out slowly. And then rub some on your skin. And think, how would that feel on a sunburn, on dry, inflamed skin? How would that feel on a dry rash? Ooh, it can feel that it's cooling. I can feel that it's soothing. And so you can apply that inward on your mucous membranes. If there's dryness, if there's inflammation, if there's irritation, a mucilage is really going to feel good and soothing. It's going to provide protection as well, because let's say that your intestines are dry and inflamed and you eat a bunch of food. Well, the fiber in that food that causes bulk is going to be scratching that intestinal tissue, and that's going to feel painful. Sometimes you'll find people that have constipation because of dryness. There's not enough lubrication, and they'll increase their fiber intake because increasing fiber is supposed to be good for constipation. And they find that it actually causes more distress because that fiber is scratching along these inflamed surfaces. You can make an infusion with marshmallow and give them that, and it not only moistens the tissues, it not only helps to soothe the inflammation, but it provides a lubricant barrier so that as the food is passing through, you don't have a direct abrasion. You could also think about that as applied to like a sore throat. So you're talking and talking, or you have a cold and your throat is inflamed. So here's your teeth, you know, here's your throat here. Dry, inflamed surfaces rubbing on one another is going to irritate the inflammation. Well, if you have a mucilage, if you take a piece of marshmallow root and give it a couple chews and stick it in your cheek, let it infuse your saliva. If you make lozenges by powdering the marshmallow root, getting it a little bit wet and mixing it with honey and then letting it dry out. If you just make tea with it, that mucilage lubricates those tissues. You don't have that same kind of abrasion on that. That works all the way through your digestive tract. There's a contact effect of the mucilage on the tissues. What's interesting is that mucilages don't only work on tissues that they come into contact with. Something about mucilage causes your body to react and moisten mucous membranes, even in the urinary tract where mucilages don't get to, even in the respiratory system where mucilages don't get to. If mucilage traveled through your blood would get all goopy like slippery elm. That doesn't happen. Paul Bergner did something where he made marshmallow tea, and he had a dry respiratory condition, and he took a sip of the tea, but he didn't swallow it. He let it sit in his mouth, and then he could feel his respiratory system moistening, and he was clearing his throat, and mucus was loosening. So in the respiratory tract, anytime we have coughs with dry mucus, think about like a rubber cement bottle, and you open it up and the rubber cement is all dried out on the inside. It's hard to get out because it's stuck. Mucilages cause the mucous membranes to moisten, and that helps to release the mucus that's dried out and soften it, and then when you cough you can actually expectorate it, get it out of the system. Marshmallow also works on the urinary tract. So you've got dryness and inflammation in the urinary tract associated maybe with urinary tract infection. You can mix this with, say, corn silk or plantain or other diuretic herbs, and it has a demulcent effect on the urinary tract. It's really, really important action. If someone is constitutionally dry, what they can do is they can make a strong infusion of marshmallow, cup's worth, and then dilute that in a quart of water or a quart and a half of water, and then drink that throughout the day. And it'll be more moistening than just the water on its own. That's a great technique for people that are just dry people, especially people who are dry and have a tendency to forget to drink enough during the day. So they're chronically dehydrated. It not only provides the water, but adds extra moisture. And mucilage has sort of more sticking power, more staying power. Any kind of cough syrups for dry coughs will benefit from having something demulcent added to them. And there's so much emphasis, especially in digestive conditions, on using slippery elm. Okay? And slippery elm bark comes from trees that need to be harvested, and a lot of elm trees are still devastated from Dutch elm disease. The slippery elm has been affected by that. And you think about cutting down a tree to harvest the elm bark, that can be okay. It's not that harvesting trees is bad, but when we can use a plant that's so easy to cultivate like this and grows with so little effort and doesn't require a lot of resources to make happen, we can use that, and it takes the burden off of other plants when they're not specifically the ones we need to use. Marshmallow is probably like the all-around multifaceted pure demulcent. I wouldn't necessarily use slippery elm for a urinary condition or a respiratory condition. A marshmallow you can pretty much use whenever mucous membranes are dried out and inflamed. You can also use the leaves. You can also use the flower. They have mucilage in them, but not quite as much. But you can add them to your teas. One of the things that I like to use marshmallow leaves and flowers for is for postpartum baths. You know, women will have birth, and they may have an episiotomy. They may have a tear in the perineum. You can add this to other astringent herbs and maybe plantain, and have the bath with this in there, and that will soothe the inflammation. It will soothe the irritation. And because mucilages are mucopolysaccharides, they also help in tissue repair. So it'll be helpful also for the wound and not just for the soothing aspect. It's a wonderful plant. Like I said, it's really easy to grow. It produces abundant seed. Once you start growing it, it'll spread around into other areas of your garden. It's low maintenance. So a lot of people who aren't necessarily cultivators of plants can grow marshmallow and then get lots of plants from them without having to feel like, oh, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of maintenance to have this plant around. It's a very important plant in herbalism.